welcome back again to the Weird and Strong podcast. I'm Jeremy Grinsteiner, your weird host, and I'm excited for you guys to listen to and hear about our guest this week. Somebody who I got to know, luckily, in person, and we've gotten to extend that relationship online. It's Nate Baumgardner. He's the coach of Microdose Mastery, and he's been doing amazing things out there in the world as a coach, helping people find their passions. We get to dive into his journey even further and get to learn about all of the exciting things that have led to him being the amazing coach that he is today. So, without further ado, let's get weird, folks. All right, welcome Nate Baumgardner to the Weird and Strong podcast. How you doing today, brother?
I am doing amazing, my friend. It is a beautiful day here in Richmond, Virginia. Just got done with a coaching call, a sales call, and I am ready to have a beautiful conversation with you, brother.
Yeah, it's been about a year since we last talked when you were here in Fargo, North Dakota.
I was in Fargo leading my first psilocybin ceremony with some friends of yours.
Yes.
And had the opportunity to co-lead a workshop with you at Ice House Fit, which was an amazing experience all around.
Yeah, and that was my first workshop experience in the mindset realm. So I appreciate your support in that, and it's great to reconnect with you after all of these days that have gone by. So
indeed, it is. Yeah.
As we start everybody off, I got a weird question for you. Are you ready?
Let's hear it. I am ready. Born ready.
If it was raining tacos, would you eat them?
Given the level of heavy metals in our ecosystem, I am going to say no. Yeah, there is a lot of pollutants that we are pumping into the atmosphere. That I'm going to, at very least, want those tacos tested first before knowing, in order to know what's going into my body in consuming them. So,
yeah, it's a very thoughtful answer of that you came to very quickly. Of hey, tacos are falling from the sky. I'm not just going to open my mouth and just let one fall in.
Yeah. Well, one may fall in. However, if I was going to subsist on them, then I would want to. My body has the ability to process a small amount of these things. However, if I'm going to live off of these raining tacos, then I want to know what's in them. How is that question originated?
I just start collecting weird, either between my own thoughts or places on the internet that I start to see people ask weird things. I like to just bring some of those forward. This one was not an original thought. This one was one that I can't even remember where I saw it. Many times these questions are just meant to break the ice a little bit and
sure,
get the brain juices flowing, have a few laughs along the way too.
Sweet, let's dive in.
Yeah, so I know that you have an interesting story of how you've become the Nate that we know today. So weave us that tale a little bit of how did you get started into this coaching practice that you're bringing into the world, which we'll share more later. Like, were you always somebody that was gravitating towards these types of experiences, or is this something that is a newer thing for you?
So I have always enjoyed adventure and novelty and being weird. You know, I never went to a conventional school. I started out being homeschooled and then was Waldorf schooled for 2nd through 12th grade, and had my first experience getting grades when I was in college. So I would say that I'm very grateful to my parents for that experience to start, but also never had that initial conditioning to the degree that many people experience in the public school system. And so in that, I imagine I was given a lot more latitude to be my weird self and to express And that's not to say I didn't experience a certain degree of judgment and imposter syndrome and running up against the things that we all encounter as we go through puberty, finding ourselves, experimenting, going through the process of learning who we are through our own innate curiosity. However, I'll say the absence of conditioning is what I attribute to a large degree to my willingness to continue to lean in and play in where I find myself today, which is working as a psychedelic coach and facilitator and breathwork coach and musician, and having many hyphenates in my job title as an entrepreneur. So yeah, that if that answers your question,
Yeah.
I can get more into different specifics if you wish about my journey. But yeah, that's how I found myself where I am.
So, we'll go right into that journey. Is having all of these roles or all of these things, being a musician, a coach, all of these roles that you have for yourself as an entrepreneur, is that something that you envisioned as a kid, or is that something that you've come to over time?
It's something that I've come to over time. My parents were never entrepreneurs, so it wasn't something that I gravitated towards organically having a model for. Being a business owner, being somebody who is a starter of things. However, being a manifester in human design, which I'm starting to have more understanding of, is somebody who starts things at the early stages before everybody else is in that space of understanding. They're typically the innovators, the people who are, leading the pack before it's comfortable to do so. And so that I attribute to being a multi-hyphenate, being somebody who is new in a field that is still at the early stages of. We're experiencing a renaissance of psychedelics being more mainstream now over the past several years, of people, particularly the US government, beginning to see more utility of them in working with post-traumatic stress disorder and severe depression and anxiety, and these different things that are really just a side effect of coping with the modern day lifestyle that we find ourselves in. So yeah, that being my present experience was, I had to overcome some certain challenges with my relationship with money and with being a business owner, being a solo entrepreneur, and starting something that was new and feeling like, who am I to do this thing? Who am I to work with plant medicines? Who am I to be a coach? And answering that question, well, I am me. I am uniquely myself and get to choose whatever the fuck I want to do in any given moment and do the things that bring me joy and make me happy and allow me to live in alignment with what my soul is calling me towards, that gets to be unique and the purest expression of me that I allow in any given moment. And to be able to experience that for the seconds that I allow myself to, and the presence that I give myself, is a true gift. To be able to have the tools and to be able to be in that expression when I'm in presence.
Very cool. Use that word of multi-hyphenate, like that's a interesting different way of that I hadn't heard somebody describe that before. Another way I'd heard that described is a multi-potentialite.
Multi-potentialite.
Yeah. That one came from a college course that I took because I went back to school at one point and was pursuing this degree basically for people who are like the bit of the misfits, people who didn't fit into a typical degree program. And this was the first thing that the advisor had us, was a TED talk about that, of these that this being a superpower amongst many people, is that for you, did you always gravitate towards all of these different lanes, or did you try to like fit yourself into a specific lane at some point?
Definitely tried to fit myself into several specific lanes. One of them was, being in the nonprofit sector, the NGO sector. I lived in Europe for about 9 years. I did my bachelor's degree in Bulgaria, in Southeastern Europe, and then my master's in the Netherlands, and eventually graduated with this Master's of Science in Public Policy and Human Development, which is a very big way of saying, like, looking at social systems, looking at governmental or systemic policies and seeing how we can shift them to support people, seeing how we can build the most people-focused policies within a government or within an institution that support growth and sustainability overall. And ended up doing an internship with the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat in Bonn, Germany, and was at that point feeling very fired up about the environment and about social protection, and moved to Amsterdam and started a nonprofit organization called Bread Cycle that delivered food surplus to refugee and homeless organizations. And it was so much fun to do. And also it did not bring in a lot of money. And it was a challenge. I was working, multiple part-time jobs in different kitchens and doing like telemarketing things in Amsterdam, and was like making ends meet barely, and had this story that, life was a struggle. In order to like live my dream and do this thing that I was so passionate about, I had to struggle, and it had to be hard, and I had to like just meet this struggle with this grinding, like the heaviness of the energy in order to be of service.
Have to hustle harder and grind harder than everybody else.
Yeah. And so had this deep love of service, of being of service. And that is like the unifying component of the things that, bring me joy, is to see the fruits of what I'm doing have a real impact in the people that I'm serving. And so, that led to me not being able to finance my own visa. And so after about 2 years of running that organization, ended up leaving the Netherlands, coming back to the US, and finding a job with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, with FEMA, which back in 2001, 2002 came under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security, with other agencies like Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and, Border Patrol and law enforcement education. And so was working for FEMA. And, if somebody had said after I graduated my bachelor's in Bulgaria in political science that I was going to be an analyst for FEMA, I would be like, fuck yeah, that sounds like my dream job. And I found myself in this highly bureaucratic, highly political agency with a job that was founded around service. Like, I was an analyst. I would go out to these different disasters, would gather data, would do interviews and see what policies were working, what policies weren't, what best practices were being instituted, and would write, spending, hundreds of hours on these reports from start to finish that would sit on somebody's desk and gather dust. And so was running up against, like, I'm putting all of my energy into this thing and feeling drained at the end of it. For what? I'm on this career track, was getting all of this positive feedback from my bosses and my boss's bosses and my boss's boss's bosses of all of the potential that they were seeing in me and how I was a leader, and was like, am I destined to 30 more years of this, to retire and then begin living my life?
Mm-hmm.
And that thought filled me with dread. However, it was a dread that I was shutting myself off to because, I was drinking alcohol and I was partying on the weekends and doing all of the things that somebody in that community does. I'll say that to refrain from projecting that I was doing to cope with the existential dread of not being in alignment with my life's purpose. And we find ourselves in March of 2020 when the pandemic started and FEMA became the lead federal agency in the US that was responsible for pandemic operations. Initially it was getting the masks, the personal protective materials and the hand sanitizer and all of these things in and working all of exactly. Yeah,
all
the
logistics.
things
that now seem like it's so far in the past, but everybody listening not fondly, but clearly remembers that time period.
Well, we are programmed to forget, to have it be out of our memory as the psyop that it was. Mm-hmm. And so as I'm in this deep experience of gathering data to see what it is that we're doing in this very new thing for not only FEMA, but the world as a whole, I am given some LSD from a friend of mine. Mm. And I had a couple of deep experiences with mushrooms when I was in Amsterdam, where I connected with this space and with my spirit guides and was able to have these conversations of what it looked like to connect with this space in understanding what it meant to lean into my truth. Mm-hmm. And in being given this LSD, chose to go back into that realm and created a ceremony for myself, set an intention of seeing the blind spots of my life. And oh boy, did I do that. Mm-hmm. I had the come up. So I had music. I had a playlist, Music for Mushrooms by East Forest, where if you ever feel called to self-guide a journey, this is the music that I recommend. Mm. And had my face mask on and took the LSD in the morning and came up and had this experience of feeling all of the pain that I had ever caused anyone in my life up until that point. And it's difficult to describe with words. However, it was like the deepest heartache you've ever felt, the deepest regret you've ever felt. And then I felt this loving, deep presence ask me, are you going to continue punishing yourself for these things? And at that point, I am cascaded into what I can only call as incarnations and reincarnations. Mm. This experience of living a lifetime, dying and being reborn. Living a lifetime, dying and being reborn. Some of these deaths were more challenging, came with more resistance than others, but then I would come back into my physical form and would experience the depth and breadth of the human experience, the joy, the heartache, the sorrow, the happiness, all of the things, and then would die and surrender into that death. And this lasted for about 4 or 5 hours in human time. Mm-hmm. That then I was able to take my face mask off, I was still with the medicine. I was still under the influence of the medicine, but I stood up and was able to walk myself to the mirror of my bathroom and splash water on my face and looked at the mirror and saw myself as an 80-year-old man on the trajectory that I was currently on, and seeing the deadness, seeing the lack of joy in his eyes that I was destined for, that I understood that if I continued to make the choices I was making, to commit to the life that I was committed to at that point of being a career public servant for the US government and all of the ego benefits and power that came with that, and the inevitable, progression and advancement in that was to come, that I was essentially being promised by my superiors that I would live a joyless life and that I was robbing myself of being in my truth. And so as I came out of that, I went down to the park nearby my house. I went for a walk and asked myself, all right, well, what next? Because once you know, there is only continuing to know. It's impossible to unknow a thing that is that deep. And so I slowly, through uncovering what my next step was, came to the understanding that I was meant to lean into being a healer and being a coach, and that it didn't have to happen immediately, but that it would happen eventually if I chose to. If I chose to do the brave and scary thing of trusting myself. And with that, I also began microdosing LSD and psilocybin. And that helped me to anchor back to the truth that I had come to in that experience of life gets to look differently. I get to lean into the things that bring me joy. And that culminated in meeting many beautiful coaching communities that have supported me on my journey. One of them being Training Camp for the Soul, which has guided me first in doing the self-healing of coming to the opportunity of connecting with all of my past traumas, my emotional injuries that I learned as a child, and moving through them so that I could see, who I was in truth, and then learning to facilitate that work through the Training Camp for the Soul Mastery program. And right around the start of that program, I made the decision to leave federal service, to leave my job with FEMA back in, I believe it was December of 2021, and to start my coaching business focused around guiding people how to do this inner work somatically, through shifting their language, through getting clear on what their dream life is, what their 10-year vision is, and then casting that vision and taking action towards that vision through building sacred relationship with yourself and building sacred relationship with the medicine, whether that be through heroic large dose journeys or through microdosing, which is much more accessible for people, especially who are at the early stages of their work with psychedelics, should they feel called. And I always tell people, because psychedelics are new to, the broad sphere of consciousness as being something that is therapeutic versus, that's something that they use back at Woodstock. And that's, what the hippies did to turn on, tune in, and drop out. And we're re-envisioning what psychedelics look like as a teacher, as an ally, as a medicine, that we don't need the medicine. The medicine can be a co-creative process for us. However, it is merely the finger that is pointing to the moon of our own awareness, of our own truth, of our own connection with our soul, that connects us with spirit, that connects us with the universal nature of all things. So that was a long rant. And yeah.
We love long rants here at the Weird and Strong podcast. So first of all, just appreciate your sharing of your story of how you got to where you are today with and what you're bringing into the world. I love that you were talking about this from an accessibility standpoint, because there's a lot of directions that people could take that, exactly what you said, of being very dismissive of these medicines, of being something just counterculture, or just for others, and not something that could be really actually helpful for them. Along those lines, what sorts of paths do you see people taking to start to explore that? Like, what's the gateway into this type of work that you've been seeing in your practice as a coach that has helped to guide people into this journey?
The gateway is typically knowing that what they're currently using to cope is not sustainable. Whether it's anti-anxiety medication or antidepressant medication, or just feeling a degree of overwhelm that they're not medicating in their life, that has been progressively building, and then reaching a point where something has got to give. Like, I can't continue numbing out with my Zoloft or with my clonazepam or whatever they're taking as a numbing agent. And seeing the impacts of those in their relationships and in their own personal journey, and knowing that there's something better, but not knowing how to get there, not having a clear path forward, and feeling like they're at that breaking point, sadly. And I know that you're a coach as well, and in that, I'm sure you've seen people who are like, I don't know what to do, I just know I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so, particularly with mental health, people are now coming around to a curiosity about, oh, this is being used to help veterans treat PTSD. Well, I don't have experience in battle. However, I just went through a really traumatic divorce and am feeling a lot of victimhood around that. Or like, I was molested as a child or raped as a child, or whatever it may be, that like, I know this happened. However, I know I'm also coping with it in unhealthy ways in my life right now. And so, above and beyond just microdosing, how can I begin to work with the medicine in a way that is healing? To work with the medicine in a way that allows me deeper access to myself, that will grant me the clarity to move through the density and the cloudiness that I'm experiencing right now, and be able to see the clear sky, to be able to see the vision for my life that is unknown right now. And that comes with a lot of trust. And it's a process of building trust with clients that, they are able to meet me in a place of trust, to support them in understanding that, we're constantly building this space in our nervous system to hold more and more energy. And we have this term in our community called holding space, which really comes back to, are we able to hold our own energy from a place of equilibrium, so that we can then be a grounded, supportive rock for other people to be able to feel and understand and trust themselves through that stability we're able to engender in them.
That was a topic that I've been meaning to explore with somebody. And so I'm glad that you brought it out, of this idea of holding space. Is that something that, so there's a question of, for people who are looking to get into the coaching space, of how do I learn how to hold space for others? Is that something that do you believe is inherent to people, or is that something that they can learn and that they can cultivate for themselves?
Yes and yes. Great. There are people who are more sensitive to the energetic flow that exists all around us at this subtle, unseen level. And some people call those people empaths.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's just it starts with an inherent sensitivity as a child that is slowly beaten out of us into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of us, it takes more to get back to that space of sensitivity, of understanding where a person is at without them saying any words, just through being able to look in their eyes, to sense their body language, to feel them at the heart level. Mm-hmm. And it is a practice that you can build through first working through your own karma, through working through your own childhood wounding, your own emotional injuries that you experienced in your early life that maybe are even attributed to birth trauma, to past life trauma, that are a part of the self-healing that is the foundation of being able to hold space for others. And so I truly believe that, everyone has a gift to share that comes from their own groundedness, and holding space can look unique for each and every person. But what it really comes from is a space of groundedness and understanding who you are at this deepest, primal, inherent level that goes beyond the ego understanding of who we are, the differentiation of you as Jeremy or me as Nate, but understands that we are all just parts of the whole. Mm-hmm. And when we give ourselves the space to connect with our own experience in somatic awareness, in holding ourself and feeling held by the universe, by source consciousness, then we can begin to support others from that place of groundedness, of love and connection for ourselves.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Yeah. Didn't know that was going to come up today, and I appreciate the everything that you said there, because it touched on another thing as well that I was going to talk about, was as you were talking about getting into the plant medicine journeys of microdosing, and as people become more aware of it or curious about it, I may not have these large traumas. It's continuing to take those wounds that we have, as you explained and described, of continually being able to take those things and heal them for ourselves, through all of these modalities, and then also using that to just show up for ourselves and others is a fantastic practice, and continue to bring much more compassion into the world. Through all of this, since as many of your hyphenated roles have suggested, let's talk a little bit about the music side of things. Yes. Have you always been a musician, or is this a new addition to the collective roles that is Nate Baumgardner?
Since my heart began beating, I have been a musician. I would say my passion for music went through a period in my childhood where I was learning the violin and was getting more regimented in it, and it became this thing that I lost love for, as a result of feeling like it was this thing that I needed to punish myself to become better at. And so I left the violin and shifted to the guitar when my mom asked me, well, what instrument do you want to play if you don't want to play the violin? And so I got my first $80 beater guitar, and my mom got me lessons for the first year that I started playing, around 12 years old. And started playing just like the basic chords and learning some Bob Marley songs and Bob Dylan and the classics, and got better at it and began to experiment and play guitar with other people and learn to love just the improvisation and the curiosity and the play with music as I started to get mastery of like building the muscles in my hands and the calluses on my fingers with guitar. And when I was 15, 16, started playing music in a band. And we were by no means good, and we had fun. We would have band practice and we would get together and we do all the things, and we would play at the coffee houses of our high school. And it was so much fun to be in that space of learning, but learning from a desire to for the sake of learning, for the sake of curiosity and enjoyment. Exactly. For the experience. And that has been something I've also been on a journey with as I experience overwhelm and stress and what we all experience in the ups and downs of life. And whenever I find myself in overwhelm, I can tell, because I'll find myself in a place where, like, oh, I have not picked up my guitar in months. I have not played a song in weeks. I have not even, sang or listened to music even. Mm-hmm. And so having that as a barometer of like where I'm at psycho-emotionally, because whether a person plays no instrument at all or plays 15 different instruments, like everybody can attune to rhythm, mm-hmm. to melody, to vibration at this deep unconscious level. And being able to feel the rhythm, to feel the frequency and the resonance is a deep gift that we have. And so much can be communicated in that resonance that I have just begun exploring mm-hmm. in whatever 23 years now that I've been a musician, stated since I started playing guitar, is really when I feel my musical journey began. And so in combining that with the medicine work, it has allowed me to open to a new level of joy that combines two deeply impactful things in my life that have been psychedelic medicines and music, and to weave them in this practice that is, a fundamental aspect of how indigenous practitioners facilitate mm-hmm. in the Icaros, and how they serve the medicine and support people emotionally, coming back to holding space. Mm-hmm. Like that is how the container is held and people are guided in moving through energy, is through the music. Mm-hmm. And the music supports people in their journey by providing them a frequency to attune to externally as they go through their inner deep facing of their shadow material. Yeah. And so I am still at the very early stages of exploring what that journey looks like. And in the past several ceremonies that I have been able to facilitate, have started bringing in the native wood flute mm-hmm. and the frame drum and guitar and handpan and the rattles and all of the different things that have been indigenously used as I explore what those look like for me, and just listening to my intuition as to what wants to come through musically in support of the energy of the collective group that I'm holding space for, that I'm facilitating for.
Yeah, that's something so primal in us, even, is that, thinking back to when we were children, and there's something so deep and innate to us of if we are, when a child is struggling and they go to their mother and they hear that voice, or maybe there's a song that's associated with it, or being soothed to sleep by a lullaby. And these are things that are just so core to us that I'm so jazzed that you're incorporating that as well, because I'm interested to hear, a year from now, 10 years from now, of how that has evolved for you.
Yeah.
Having my background in music, there's a component of this that I've talked with other folks on this podcast as well, that music is a language on its own. And many times we forget that, and we forget it as we start to only look at it as a commodity because we've had, mass produced music all around us all the time. It's readily available. We have background noise as music, and it fills space. I found it really interesting that you brought up this tendency where you're like, oh, I haven't touched my guitar in a week, because I felt very similar to that. When you're in that sort of stage where you're feeling disconnected or you're starting to feel overwhelmed with life and things like that, do you find that even the performing or playing aside, does music sound the same as if when you're fully connected and fully grounded? Or do you start to tune it out?
I would say I lose focus on the importance that music plays in my spiritual healing. Mm. And so, yeah, I do tune it out in that I am less intentional about the music that I am engaging with. And perhaps I'm even unconsciously engaging with darker music because of what I'm experiencing below the surface, where I'll be vibrating at this lower, more challenging energy and will be called towards more violent music or music that just is more victimy or more in that headspace of, it's not empowerment, to use a negation. And when we're understanding of, the kind of music that we're resonating with, we can also use that awareness, because awareness is the first stage of healing, to then to shift our focus from what it is that we're feeling in the moment to what it is that we want. And I believe it was back in like 2019 after my grandfather passed, where like I was just listening to all of this very dark rap music and it was like scratching a mosquito bite until it's bloody. And found myself like, okay, I'm in this space that is me trauma bonding with this sorrow, this grief, and coping with it through what it is the media that I'm engaging with. And I put together this playlist of music that is cathartic and allows me to remember myself first and also remember my grandfather. Remember what he brought into my life. Remember the qualities that he imbued in me and that he carried with him through his life. And so I think whenever we are in a space of contraction, we can experience that as, if I am in my own personal hell right now, what does the polar opposite of this look like? What is the heaven that is the polarity of this? And what music is reflective of that polarity? If it's deep and dark and victimy, what empowering music do you also resonate with that you may just be shutting out because it's not what you're feeling right now? And in giving yourself the space to listen to that or even play it, if you play an instrument, like how can you begin attuning yourself to that in the shift towards feeling the lighter, more free, more flowing vibrations of resonance that music can communicate?
Be interested to hear your opinion on this, because having these experiences, and like for me, I was a recovered swoopy hero emo kid, listening to the sad music and thinking that, I'm the only person in the world that's ever felt like this.
Right.
Like when we're in these spaces and we're consuming this type of music on the daily, like there's a certain amount of feels good to feel bad.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I mean, it comes from that being what we learned,
Mm-hmm.
and also that being feeling safe. Like if we are the victim, then there's nothing that we could possibly do to shift our state. And therefore, we're good where we are, feeling like shit.
Yeah.
We're good where we are, feeling like a victim, feeling disempowered. And when we come back to the awareness that that's where we're at, we can then be like, oh, well, if that is the story I'm telling myself about my life that may or may not be serving me, I would posit that it's not, wasn't serving me in grieving my grandfather's death to listen to artists like Suicide Boys or Ghost Main or any of these other like really dark music.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that's where I'm at, then okay, give myself the grace to feel that. And also, what is my responsibility to shift? Where can I begin bringing in artists into my playlist like Trevor Hall or Nako Bear, or artists that have a deeper attunement to the reality of what it means to move through our own wounding and find a place where we are the creators of our own reality, where we are in deep love with our life and ourselves. And I imagine it's a journey for everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, while you were experiencing your swoopy-haired emo phase, I was listening to a lot of angry punk music and gangster rap and these music that glorifies values that are not my own. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's it. It's a process of understanding what we're tuning to and being willing to take actions to shift that come with all the media that we consume, and looking to like what reality do you want to reinforce in your social media intake, in the television that you're watching, in the music that you're consuming, obviously. And there are a lot of forces at play beyond just the wounding that we have experienced on the individual level that want to keep the collective disempowered and in a victim state, projecting their shit onto everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because that is where we're most easily controlled, in a place of fear where we're just coping with our present reality and feeling disempowered, like there's no way that I can change things, so I'm just going to continue in this loop of feeling sorry for myself.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe buying that next thing is going to make me feel a little bit better.
Exactly. Yep.
Watching that next show is going to really, really put the cherry on the top of this week. Yeah.
That next little dopamine release.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is a topic I've contemplated for a while and had some discussions with others with, is that exactly what you were talking about, of like this being, you know, our mindset being the stories that we tell ourselves, and really thinking about this of like, okay, I'm watching this movie, I'm watching somebody else's story, actually seeing somebody else's story, whether it's fiction, otherwise, play itself out visually. Music can much be the same thing. And so what stories do I want to take part in? Am I taking away from the authorship of my own story by distracting myself with somebody else's?
Yeah. And no matter what it is that we're taking it in because on some level there is an aspect of ourself that resonates with that thing. Mm-hmm. And when we come to see ourselves as more than just the whoever we are in this unique experience, but a multitude of selves that can exist as a victim, or that can exist as somebody who's hypercritical or hyper egoic, and that we contain all of these multitudes of self, but there is a witness above all of those that can see them and experience them and be in presence with them, that from that place of the inner witness, we're able to acknowledge that facet of ourselves and love it. Because when we see the inner critic or the victim as an aspect of our awareness, as an aspect of our personality, there's a tendency of, once we have that awareness, of judging that. And we get stuck in this loop of judgment, this loop of differentiation as this is something that is wrong, or something that, I'm unlovable or unworthy of what I'm trying to achieve because I'm experiencing this thing. And so when we are able to come back to presence, we're able to move into that higher realm of awareness in connection with these different aspects of ourself that are a progressive relationship building of acknowledging them for what they are and sending them love in connecting with these facets so that we can have a deeper awareness of them when they come up next. Because the more we do the work, these stories continue to come back up that are wired in our consciousness around money, around our worthiness of love, around our worthiness of being loved by others and expressing our truest gifts and being able to be vulnerable and seen among others, where the true power lies in us being in integrity. So it's a journey of remembering and forgetting that we are these divine beings having this physical experience in this body that is undoubtedly beautiful, even when it is the most challenging, when we're experiencing the most heartache, the most loss, the most suffering, and giving ourselves the grace to experience all of it, the depth and the breadth of our human experience.
There's a component of that I see, especially in the coaching community, or not the coach, like just in the overall coaches in the world, or different certifications and things like that, of just what you said, of this being the journey of constantly remembering and forgetting, is that even within different coaching practices, it can be very easily assumed that this is going to be the one thing that's going to set me on the right path. This is the one thing that's going to, quote unquote, fix me.
Right.
And forgetting that this is a journey. Was that something for you? Is that something that you, like, what was the journey like for you to learn that lesson?
At the start of the past 3.5, 4 years of my journey, I was listening to so many podcasts, reading all the self-help books, and thinking that I was solving the problem through my knowledge. And that in and of itself can become an addiction, in thinking that there is a problem to be solved within us. Because, like, coaching is great. It provides us accountability, and it allows us to receive reflection in our lives about our potential. And the real medicine is the action that we take upon the reflection in integrating that wisdom. And so the solution is often negation acknowledged, not more knowledge. Like, more knowledge can be helpful when used strategically, but there are times that I find myself fooling myself in thinking that, this next book is going to be what does it. When I, read it and then do all of the things in the book,
I'll finally crack the code of the universe right there.
Exactly. And, that is great, because that is all a part of the play as well, of, engaging with knowledge, engaging with thought systems, and seeing what resonates and what doesn't. Because there is no new knowledge. Like, everything, it's a matter of am I going to resonate with the presentation of this thing over that thing? Mm-hmm. And in engaging with these different thought systems, we can see, what triggers me, what comes up when I read this challenging thing. And then in that triggering, we can connect with where the opportunity is for me to shift my relationship with myself and build a deeper awareness of what triggered me in that, or if I felt a particular emotion. So that is how I have learned to use content as a tool through awareness practices, through parts work, and understanding that I am more than just my ego or my critic or my inner child who just wants to play, but to have a flowing relationship that these aspects of me want to express at different times as a result of my own spiritual growth and my own mental, emotional growth, these different levels.
In that exploration of these selves, if somebody is looking at starting that path, what's a great way to start that exploration?
Taking a deep breath and noticing where you're at. And you can do this right now if you wish on listening to this podcast. You can take a big breath into the belly through the nose. When we breathe in and out of the nose, we are down regulating our nervous system. We're allowing ourselves to go inward, and we can close our eyes and feel where we are at in this moment. And in this moment, we can begin to create safety in our experience. And we may be feeling calm. We may be feeling wired from our coffee or our nicotine, or we may be feeling sad, or we may be feeling joyful, or we may be feeling, whatever it may be in the spectrum of human emotion. We can allow ourselves the gift of safety in breathing and reminding ourselves that we're safe to experience exactly what we're experiencing right here and in this moment. And wherever we are, there is presence. And talk about, Ram Dass wrote the book, Be Here Now, Be in the Moment. And all of these spiritual practices of prayer and meditation and breath work have this unifying factor of being with what is, being with reality. And we are able to be with reality when we come back to where we are in the moment. And for me, the biggest tool to do that has been breath, has been mantras, and has been somatic work, where after you create safety, you check in with yourself. You check in with where you may be holding heavy, dense vibration in your body, and breathing into that space, connecting with that space and seeing what's there, seeing what that aspect of you needs, seeing what aspect wants to be seen, wants to be expressed, and giving it the space to express. Because it's likely that whatever you're holding is an aspect of your previous learning from your childhood that you took on from a mother or father or caretaker, or some even traumatic experience in your adulthood that wired you to believe that this is how the world works always whenever I encounter this external stimuli. And when we come back to presence, we can see through that illusion to move through the energy at the physical level. And that, beyond just working with plant medicines, is what I have found to be incredibly potent in guiding people through, because the only way out is through the energy. Mm-hmm. Shutting off to it will only create temporary relief. And even then, it is just a coping mechanism to allow ourselves, another couple of hours or another couple of days of getting done what we want to get done, and then we're hobbling along, and eventually we reach this crisis point where holding this energy reaches this point where it's now expressing as a disease or as anxiety or depression or whatever that may be, that we go to our doctor and they want to medicate it. Mm-hmm. They want to take it to the next level of coping, where you're numbing yourself through, shutting off your neurotransmitters to experience that, where, mm-hmm. that is going to, the energy is going to express no matter what. However, if we numb our brain off to it, it's just going to come out some other way. Mm-hmm. And so the real gift is just being able to come back to what it is, where it is, and what opportunity we have in moving through it in this moment.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with everybody listening. As we come to the end of our experience here that we're co-creating, what types of things are you bringing into the world that you like to share with the audience? We've talked a little bit about your plant medicine and your coaching and your music, but open the floor up to you to share what you're bringing into the world.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and to share the things that I am exchanging in the energetic flow, because the things that I am bringing to the world right now are the deepest expression of my gifts. This very week, I launched my microdosing mastery program and kicking that off. And it is a year-long mentorship that I am guiding people through in doing all of the things that we talked about in the past hour, of connecting with our deeper wisdom and creating true vision for what our life looks like when we give ourselves the space to move through our traumatic experiences and to love all aspects of ourselves. And so likely in about 3 to 6 months, I'll be kicking off another class. The current cohort is closed. And what this will evolve into, not even I am able to see at the moment. However, the current program is a weekly coaching call, a monthly breathwork ceremony, as well as 8 modules with a bonus module. The 8 modules go into the tools, the practices, and the wisdom and the science around, how we do this work in a holistic way of building relationship with ourselves. First, guiding people in how to create a microdosing practice ceremony around their microdosing, so that is a healing, expansive experience. Then moving into how we understand our traumas, how we understand these emotional injuries that we experienced as a child and how we can move through them, how we build our relationship with our energy, how we get clear on our vision for our life, and how we can create our reality through building our relationship with this subtle energy, with our vibration, our words. And in using these different tools and awareness practices in this intentional way, in tandem with the medicine and the incremental habits that we're able to build, we're able to integrate on a weekly basis the kind of life that is our dream, that is ever evolving, and that is expansive in the unique expression of each of our gifts. So if you are feeling called to do this medicine work, I'll be, taking calls from prospective people to join the wait list over the coming months. You can reach out to me on Instagram at innate, INNATE.flow, FLOW, or microdosingmastery.co is my website, and you can find all of the information about the program there. A couple of months ago, I also released my first breathwork album that combines my own music with my own breathwork to create a unique journey for people who want to do the deep work. And it is a psychedelic journey without the medicine. The only medicine is your breath. And the breath work has been a crucial component for me in my own journey, as well as in my facilitation, because of how accessible it is as everybody breathes. It is a commonality in all of us. And when we learn to do it in a conscious and intentional way, we can use that as a tool to downregulate, to get out of the fight or flight that we often find ourselves in the daily overwhelm of life, and then to move into the more expansive spaces beyond our conscious mind, where we're able to be in connection with our soul and with spirit and with our spirit guides and the different forces, the ancestors that are supporting us on our journey, that when we give ourselves the space to tap into, are waiting for us to honor them in taking the brave next step towards realizing our dream.
So cool. I'm so excited to continue to see both the microdosing mastery unfold as you continue to grow that, and also the expression of your talents in the breathwork space with your music. So thank you for sharing those. And for all of you listening, we will have all of that information in the show notes in case you missed that, so that you have some handy links to be able to access those. And with
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, brother. It has been a true gift to know you and to see your journey and to get to create with you. And I know that this is just the beginning, both for you and for me. And I am excited to see where all of this goes. So sending you lots of love and gratitude for having me on your show, and wishing you all a beautiful day.
Thank you. And with that, folks, stay strong, stay weird.